package and give it an overall score based on story, menus, cover, and well, whatever else, extras, and whatever else I can think to score on this thing. Today's DVD is the Doctor Who's is the 7th serial ever in the series, the Sensorites. This is a somewhat forgotten story, even its author. I remember us coming to the conclusion that the writer of this episode, back on the old official BBC message board, we came to the conclusion that the writer of this episode was a pseudonym for somebody else, because we couldn't find out anything about him, but more on that later. First, let's start with the story itself. I'm going to go somewhat against the trend in Doctor Who fandom and say that, yes, while this story is stretched, because back then the way that they paid for stories that were heavy on makeup effects or new sets was to have more episodes that use those. By having more episodes that use the same set, it's the same makeup, and the same actors, they were able to stretch the cost out. So a lot of these early Doctor Who serials go along at a snail's pace. This is something that is to the detriment of the Sensorites, I believe, because at 7 parts, such a simple story this story could have been told in 4 episodes. It's a very good story. Don't get me wrong on that point. It is, and I'm not going to try and try to outline the whole plot for you, or do a beat by beat with clips from the show or anything like that, because it would take far too long, and people have commented that my videos are quite long enough. Thank you. So anyway, just at this point in the series, the Doctor he's traveling with his granddaughter Susan, who is his granddaughter. Don't give me any of that New Adventures or rubbish from the books or the comics or any webisodes where they tried to say that she was a clone of him, or she wasn't his real granddaughter, or she was just another companion. Don't give me any of that garbage. The only person who the Doctor has ever reacted the way that he does around her is Susan. So he treats her like a granddaughter. She never calls him anything other than grandfather. She is his granddaughter. The Doctor had a family at some point. Even the new series, one thing, while I have my problems with Steven Moffat, one thing that I do like is that in his second ever story, the Doctor, while he was evasive when asked if he had been a parent, Matt Smith's performance in that scene, in his second episode, clearly indicates that he is answering yes to the question of did he have a family once. So thank you, Steven Moffat, for finally putting that stupid controversy to bed. And believe me, this has been one of the more contested issues in Doctor Who fandom since I joined it back around 1996 on the official BBC message board. Oh no, I said I was going to make these videos shorter, didn't I? Sorry. Must be the stress of being alone on this ship for all of, well, 5 minutes actually. Oh, I'm gonna be stark raving mad. I mean, more stark raving mad by the time this journey is over. Well, anyway, he's also traveling with 2 of her school teachers who, in an not so creepy move, decide to follow Susan home one night because they both agree that she is too smart for a girl her age. Yeah. Try selling that one to the police today. 1963 was a much more innocent time. And who are Ian, a science teacher, and Barbara, her history teacher. They made up the first team of the TARDIS, and they all have great chemistry. Together with William Hartnell, who happens to be my favorite Doctor, because I believe that all other doctors are taking something from his performance, and he established the role and made it popular in the first place. Just had to stretch. I don't know. This is what hyperspace does to your legs. I don't want to be in it too long. They land on board a spaceship and find a crew that is nearly dead. And, okay, I'll give you a clip. The crew appears to be dead, and Ian proves why he would be the first one to go in a zombie apocalypse.
Stop speaking, Doctor. He was dead. What do you want?
Oh, hey! That guy who had just said it was dead. He's moving now. Huh. Let me stick my hand in front of his mouth. Let me see what that does. Ow! Oh, ow! Ow! Who possibly could have predicted that he'd bite me? Boy, I hope this isn't infectious or anything. Ow! That was mean! Huh. You know, Doctor, I know this, I've never said this before, but you've got such a nice big brain. Do you mind if I chew on it for a while? Well, anyway, it turns out the space travelers are being held in orbit around a planet called the Sensosphere. They have no idea why. Apparently, they get knocked out every so often, and it looks like they're dead, but they're just in some form of deep suspended animation, and it appears to only happen when their food and water is replenished. So the aliens who are holding them in place, well, that would seem to be a very hostile act, and who have driven a third member of the crew insane, also appear to keep them alive. A great sense of mystery is built up over the first episode. The first episode, I will say, in any story format, if they could have done this on budget for a price in 4 episodes, I would not change a thing about episode 1, really. Not much, anyway. I mean, besides Barbara and Susan stupidly going into another section of the ship when they're told where to get water, when it's pointed at. I say stupidly because they have to walk past a huge cabinet with a giant label that says water on it to get to the door that leads to the other part of the ship that they managed to lock themselves in. But other aspects are done nice and creepy. The ship seems to nearly crash into the planet and then veers off at the last second. It seems to be the aliens just proving how powerful they are. So the newcomers can't resist. And they appear to be advanced enough to take the lock from the TARDIS, stranding the Doctor and his companions on the ship. So from there, the adventure winds and twines. There's political intrigue, and it seems to be a fairly neutral take on all of the issues. Basically, what it seems to ask is, what if the Mayans and the Aztecs, when the Spanish came to them, were still as technologically outmatched by the first Spanish explorers to find their lands with all their gold, but they had some means of keeping them from returning to Spain? That basically seems to be it. And what would both sides have to do to find an accommodation? And it shows the Doctor has changed a lot since the first story, where he was willing to bash a caveman's head in the name of mere survival, to where he becomes a peacemaker. One thing I will say that I like about these longer format short stories that new Doctor Who just doesn't have is it shows the Doctor as a detective and a scientist. Nowadays, the Doctor lands on a planet, he knows its entire history, forwards and backwards, can tell his companion exactly what's going on, and can fix everything with a wave of his magic wand, I mean sonic screwdriver. Here, there is no sonic screwdriver. The Doctor doesn't know a thing about the sensosphere, so he and his companions work together as a team, gathering clues, engaging in groupthink, and just working together to solve the mystery. And both the Sensorites and the humans are in equal danger in this. And it's only by working together with the help with the Doctor as an intermediary that they're able to finally make peace. As I said, the story itself feels stretched, and then stretched at 7 episodes. So an otherwise excellent story has some moments of stupidity in it that are put in just to keep it running. But overall, I like the Doctor's approach to problem solving. I like seeing him act as a scientist, which the Doctor is supposed to be. So no hand waving of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, everything's all right at the end. Who cares how we got here? That we've gotten since the series has revived. And don't take this as me saying that I hate the new series. In fact, Matt Smith is my third favorite Doctor out of them all, and I very much and Series 5 of the new series is in my top 10 Doctor Who seasons of all time lists. So, and it has plenty of that stuff. So don't take that as me slamming the new series or rejecting it outright. It's just a refreshing change of pace to see the Doctor return to his roots. And if you want to see what the Doctor's roots are and you didn't know them before, the Sensorites is an above average story for doing that. The other problem is the look of the Sensorites themselves. Here I'll give you another clip to demonstrate the end of part 1, where these terrifying menaces are finally revealed on screen. No, they look like they were provided by the Children's Television Workshop. Hello, would you like to learn the alphabet with me? No? Alright, I'll be going. Doop 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 But all jokes about the appearance of them aside, they are decently drawn characters, and this is a story that doesn't have any straight-up heroes or straight-up villains. Just scared people doing what they think they have to do in order to survive. So, the story is a 6 out of 10. Above average for the William Hartnell era. I know a lot of people would call it below average or just average, but I happen to think that despite its flaws, it's well worth seeing if you want a decent example of where Doctor Who got its start and how Doctor Who used to work in the 1960s. And William Hartnell is in great form throughout. And he and he and Susan's relationship continues to work really well. I know a lot of people put down Susan as the stereotypical dependent screamer, but when we finally get a look at the rest of Time Lord society, she strikes me as exactly what would happen if you took someone directly out of that society with no preparation and just stuck them in the middle of these dangerous situations. And she does stand up for herself and what she believes, and she is willing to sacrifice herself for the good of others. And the Doctor seems bothered by her developing psychic powers that he doesn't have, and he's genuinely concerned about her, whereas she wants to explore it more. So there is a sort of generational conflict in there that is interesting to watch. And that again wouldn't work as well if she was just some other companion who he could drop off somewhere. He doesn't want to let go of her. She's his last tie to his family and home. And she doesn't want to let go of him. They're in this together. So, to me, the Doctor and Susan's relationship always worked. It just did. When he appeared to be angry with her, it seemed to be more a reaction of fear of losing Susan than him just being abusive. And while some would say that is a form of abuse, and I can understand that, in his case, I'll give it a bit of a pass because she seems to, in her own way, be equally worried about him going off and doing things on his own. So they both seem to be scared of losing each other at various points in the series. As I said, slightly above average story. Up next, we'll get on to the DVD proper. The DVD cover is meh, in my opinion. Has a standard, Jean Pertwee era / Doctor Who TV movie logo, name, and, well, all you really get is a shot from the ship's corridors. The Doctor standing over here, Susan standing over there. She is a big part of this story, so that's fair. But what I can't abide is that for newcomers, and a lot of people who are buying this will be newcomers, they give away what the Sensorites look like. Now I know how laughable I said they were before, but they build up such a sense of mystery. They do such an excellent job of building up a sense of mystery about them in the first episode that it kind of disappoints me that they give it away on the case. Here you got your standard spine that will just slip right in, and on your video case it'll look nice and neat. And you have your standard, shots on the back, story number 7, brief description, and a list of the extras. There is no making of on this because they got so many people on the commentary track, including William Russell, and Carol, who played Ian, who I'm impressed. Who I'm always impressed when they get him on these things because he is the oldest living member of the original series cast. Carol Ann Ford, who played Susan, and some of the humans and Sensorites who are still around, and the director and the designer Raymond Cusick, and the makeup designer. And by this point in the Doctor Who DVD range, they had learned the dangers of putting a bunch of old people in front of the television screen and just letting them watch the show dry for the first time in forever. That had led to a lot of uncomfortable pauses and them going off on tangents that didn't really lead anywhere and seemed to be non sequitur, but in previous older stories. This isn't a knock on the actors, by the way. I understand how that can happen. You get lost in thought. I mean, look at my videos. It happens to me all the time. Look at the first video I ever made, my Cleopatra review. That's a perfect example of why doing these sort of things without a script or something else is to be frowned upon. So they have a fan in there named Toby had Cook to moderate. And basically, by moderate, he doesn't have to break up any fights or anything, but he basically, if they start to wander or if the commentary track gets too quiet, he'll ask them a question about the scene or the story in general, or even the making of Doctor Who in general in his thing. But with 7 episodes, every episode has a commentary track. Every episode of Classic Doctor Who has a commentary track for it on the DVD. So with 7 episodes, they pretty much run out of topics to discuss for that would normally go onto a making of documentary. Normally, each of these DVDs has a making of documentary, but since they mined that pit dry for on in this, that they didn't do a making of documentary, so it lacks that. However, they do have Looking for Peter, and this is the moderator of the commentary track, who also writes for Doctor Who magazine, which is a monthly publication in the UK. In fact, it actually managed to stay in print during the whole time that Doctor Who was off the air. Something pretty much unheard of for a magazine based on a defunct TV show. Once the TV show goes, the magazine usually go. If there's a magazine tie-in, it usually goes long. It usually goes along with it. But Doctor Who magazine has kept going. And basically, he does what we did back in the 90s when I first became a fan and I first found other fans on the official Doctor Who message board. He goes, it's a somewhat quirky documentary that ends up being very touching in the end, where he goes looking for just who Peter R. Newman is, because you can't find any screen credits to his name. And as I said at the beginning of this review, on the official Doctor Who message board, back in the 90s, some Doctor Who viewing friends and I couldn't find anything on him at all. So we assumed that it must be a pseudonym for somebody else, or maybe the entire writer's room had pitched in to come up with this story idea, but they had to credit somebody, so they came up with an erroneous name. Turns out that is far from the truth, and what he finds actually, it starts out the documentary starts out sort of quirky and kind of a joke, but it actually ends on a very touching note, and it may seem like a long ways to go, 21 minutes to get all the answers, but believe me, it feels worth it in the end to find out that this was a real person who wrote this, and he had a very relatable and very touching life history. Then you have Vision On, which is the Vision Mixer explaining just what a Vision Mixer does. That's always fine. And you have the Secrets of a Sensphere, and that's the sound designer explaining how they created the various sounds and the Sensorite voices. You have a photo gallery, which is really just a bunch of publicity shots taken for like the Radio Times or other things at the time. And then you have some PDF materials that if you put this DVD in your computer, it will show you the Radio Times listings, original design drawings, production, and then you have the production notes from the as a subtitles option as the story is running. And then you have the highlight of any classic Doctor Who DVD, the digitally remastered picture and sound. Believe me, this is what what really sells these to me. Not everything else is just gravy. But as somebody who has seen countless classic shows allowed to fade. I mean, even the much newer, much more popular Rockford Files has been allowed out on DVD and rebroadcast on TV with all sorts of film scratches and faded colors and everything. This is a team of fans that started out small and ended up digitally digitally repairing every single episode of classic Doctor Who. In fact, in some cases, they repaired the episodes twice as the technology for doing the repairs got better, and they got better and got a larger team. They weren't happy with the restoration job they had done on the earliest releases, and they went back and redid them to bring them up to the standard. They even they even came up with a process called vidfire, and basically Doctor Who was shot on videotape, but all the videotapes were wiped. That's why you got the missing stories. However, why we have the stories back is because they were sold overseas, and when they were sold overseas, they were put on film. Now, as you may know, film and videotape have a completely different frame rate. So the film copies always never looked quite right. They always looked kind of weird, you know. So what they do is they not only repair it, but their vidfire process brings it back to the frame rate and the smooth and the best they can and the closest they can get to the smooth look of the original videotape recordings, even though they don't have the original videotapes anymore. And it really is impressive work. This is the Doctor Who line is the gold standard for which all movies and TV shows are held up to in my mind. This is what I judge it on. So, yeah. So, and they do their usual excellent job. The menus are clear and easy to navigate. That is, they're the typical Doctor Who menus in that they don't have too many sub-menus, and everything has a nice organized layout that is standard for the entire DVD range without looking cheap like, say, the Warner Brothers discs, which use a template that comes from Windows Movie Maker, which is free on my PC. That's a rant for another time, what Warner Brothers has done to make their DVDs and Blu-rays look so ugly recently on the menu front. But yeah, the cover I give because it gives away something that is a mystery and that should be a mystery for first-time viewers. I first saw this on PBS, in its old scratched up glory, you know, and so I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what a Sensorite looked like, so I got the mystery preserved, and that helped, and that kept episode 1 moving along. But this, but for giving away that and not preserving the mystery for new viewers, and believe me, I have to believe there are a lot of people who are viewing these stories for the first time on DVD since they aren't broadcast on either the classic series isn't broadcast on either BBC America or PBS anymore, which is something that used to be done when I was a kid. So this is pretty much your way to see it, or I don't know. I don't know if Netflix is still streaming it, or if one of those all classic TV networks is showing it. I don't know, but all I know is that the main way that I know of to see these stories is to buy the DVD, buy or borrow or rent the DVD, and it's just a crime that they give that surprise away. So that's a 3 out of 10 right there. The cover. The story itself, 6 out of 10. For restoration job, 10 out of 10. I can't think of anywhere where I was like, oh, they should put more work into that. So the restoration is a 10 out of 10. And the extras, I'll give them a 9 out of 10. It would have been nice to have everything they said in the commentary condensed into a nice making of documentary, but that would have entailed putting a second disc on, and since they were able to fit everything onto one disc, I'm not really going to complain much about that. And the documentary on who Peter R. Newman is more than makes up for that. So I'll give the extras 9 out of 10, and well, that's it when it comes to a Doctor Who DVD, pretty much. So overall, I'm giving this DVD a score of 7.5 out of 10. Not the best, but very recommended. Not just for the story, but for the extras. Overall, the story itself wouldn't hold up, but when taken together as a whole package, it is well worth the $15 to $25 depending on where you buy it that you'll see charged for this. So yeah, I know you can get a whole season of most more recent shows, but that's because more recent US shows, they negotiated the rights for home video release in advance. Here, home video didn't really exist yet, so there weren't any contracts in place. So the BBC with these older shows has to go in. Basically, one of the members of the restoration team once explained to me online that the DVDs would cost the same even if they weren't doing the restoration, when somebody suggested that they just knock it off of the restoration and let the price go down. So you don't have to pay $20 for a 7-episode series. And he said, well, because they have to renegotiate with all the actors and everything to get the rights to use their likeness on home video because there weren't any contracts in place beforehand, that isn't possible. It would still cost the same amount of money. The restoration team isn't adding to the cost. So yeah, that's just pure gravy. The fact that this has the best restoration there is out there for a film or TV show. So yeah, overall, 7.5 out of 10 is my final score for this disc.